Hey everybody, Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity, and for this week's episode, I am actually dusting one off from 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, with Emilio Castillo of the Tower of Power. And the reason why I'm dusting it off is when I originally posted this and shared this with the world, it was only embedded on the website, and I want to get it into the YouTube channel and thought I'd kind of let you guys know what's going on here. I'm leaving the original intro to this, but I just want to let you know I'm dusting it off and re-embedding it into the website page because it would then be linking to the YouTube channel. As always, I ask that you hit like if you're liking these kind of interviews, and subscribe, please. And please feel free to share it with your friends and ask them to do the same. So without any further ado, here's that interview with Emilio Castillo of Tower of Power. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Hello, everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity.com. I'm sure, like me, you grew up listening to the sounds of Tower of Power either through their own records or work that they've done with people like Toto and Aerosmith and Rod Stewart and a whole slew of other people. They are the epitome of horn-driven rock and roll. I mean, there's them, there's Chicago, and those are like at the top of my list on this kind of sound. And my goodness, how much they have contributed to the soundtrack of our youth. And to think that they've been at it for 50 years, over 50 years actually. And so they come out with a couple years ago they did a recording. I think it was a series of 4 concerts that Emilio told me about, and they recorded those and come out with this album that you see behind me here, 50 Years of Funk and Soul. And it's recorded live, and it is phenomenal. Order it. That's all I gotta say is order it. You can go to Amazon, anywhere else, order it, because you're going to absolutely love it. And so I got a little ahead of myself here, but the founder of the band, still alive and kicking and very much involved with the band, and that is Emilio Castillo. And we had a great talk, and he told me the story behind this album, some of the stories of the history of the band and that type of thing. And what I found was exceptionally cool was a story of his recovery, and he is supportive of other people who are going through recovery from any kind of substance abuse or addiction. And he and his wife help others in this area, and I just think that is God's work, and just thrills me to know that he's doing that kind of thing, being that kind of help to others who are where he has been. And so without any further ado, here is the Boomerocity interview with Emilio Castillo of Tower of Power. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity.com. Take care. Hello, Emilio.
Hi, Randy Patterson.
Yes, sir. The one and only. No one else looks this ugly. So, how are you doing? How's the world treating you?
Very good.
Well, good deal. I trust that the pandemic hadn't touched you other than not being able to tour or anything, huh?
I got COVID, so did my wife, and had several complications from it, and I'm all recovered and
Well,
doing
good.
excellent.
Good. I'm glad everything came out okay. Well, I know some who weren't, and others who, just like you, some were asymptomatic, and I thought, wow, how does that happen? But fortunately, I haven't been touched by that. Do you, from your perspective, how do you see this affecting the music industry long term?
Long term, it's hard to tell yet. We started touring on August 8th, and we've done a reasonable amount of dates. We've lost a few while touring. We had 2 dates with Lettuce that they canceled their whole tour for the year, and so it actually worked out good because we're going to do more dates with them next year, and they're all scheduled.
Oh, cool.
And then we had another date fall through where the guy he had 2 dates with us, and we got out there on the road, and he said, "Oh no, I scheduled that one for next year." We're like, so. And the crowds, some of the crowds have been like 2/3 of what they were, but really, really excited.
Yeah, they want,
So
they're ready.
yeah, ready, yeah. And then we played Newport Beach Jazz Festival this weekend. It was phenomenal. So kind of, I think people are trying to figure out, and so are we, what the new norm is going to be. But I don't know that we've got all that figured out yet.
Nah, well, I'll give you what the indications in on my end here. I first big concert. I went to a lot of small stuff, but the first big concert I went to was Eric Clapton a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was in Nashville. It was at the Bridgestone Arena there, packed out. I came with my card and a mask ready. Didn't need either one. No temperature check, which and Nashville, I that surprised me because they're very much on board with all the protocols and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't carded. Went down to Chattanooga and saw Santana. Same thing. Saw a few people wearing masks, but there was no checks on anything. And then let's see, Rolling Stones back in Nashville at the stadium there. Hardly anybody was wearing masks, no checks or anything. Tonight I'm seeing Chicago. Got to wear a mask and got to bring my Vax card. So, and same thing, seeing Foreigner on Sunday night this weekend. So it just depends on where you go, man. I live up in the Smokies and it's pretty laid back here. So,
When we started, we had a couple of gigs where the whole place was masked up, and the venue had requested it.
yeah.
And we started the show, and we thanked them for doing that. But since then, yeah, it seems pretty loose. When our first date was at Hollywood Bowl, and I had been vaccinated once, but I hadn't got the second one. And so they made me do these tests before I got there. And I did a test. It was a particular kind of test that they wanted. And we told them what we needed, and they did the test. But when we gave it to the Hollywood Bowl, they said, wrong test. We need this one. And so at the last minute on the day of the gig, we had to go at 8 in the morning and get this other test. And then they were supposed to give it to us within an hour. And by 1 o'clock, we still didn't have the test. We were going to sound check and the results, And then at the last second, they gave us the results and it all worked out. But, then we got there and it was pretty loose, So it's hard to say.
Yeah. Hopefully a couple years from now we can look back on it all and just say thank God we got through all that, huh? So
Yeah, well, we'll see how that story plays out. I mean,
yeah.
it's hard to say, all the different scenarios and stories and documentaries that are going to come out
Yeah.
about this time.
And more conspiracy theories too, So
Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
so suffice it to say you've not seen anything like this in your 50 years in the business, right?
The first time in 52 years that I went on unemployment. First time ever. And it's
Wow.
also the first time in 50 years that I haven't worked 200 days a year.
Wow. Wow.
So really different for me. It was good for me because I had gotten married, about a year before that, and so with my new wife, and we really got to enjoy each other. And I remember about a year into it, she says to me, and I've been married twice before, and she says, have you ever spent this much time with either of your other wives? And I had to think about it. I go, no, I haven't. So it was good for us. We had a good time.
Yeah, well, in different artists I'm talking, this is the first I've heard that kind of story. With everybody else is like they had to get used to being around each other so much, and they would maybe offset some of that by going into this home studios and working on things or collaborating with others and all that. But everybody had I'm single, so I didn't have the problem, but and I'm used to working alone anyway, so it's there wasn't any real adjustment for me except restaurants and stuff, so and concerts. No concerts to go to, but
yeah. My wife and I are in the recovery community, so we both work with a lot of different people. We did that with Zoom and I don't know, we stayed busy, we always do. So but there was plenty of time to be together, and that proved to be really nice.
Well, my goodness, my hat's off to you, and working with those in recovery. That's, to take what you've been through and then try to help others with that. That's huge. And I I'm not a recovering addict at all. I'm not a current one either. But I know a lot of people who are and who are in that industry of helping others, and it's a tough thing that you're doing, but thank God you're doing that. The recovering addicts need that kind of support, as you well know, and I'm just glad you're there to do that. So,
My privilege.
so in 50 years, I mean, my gosh, has your head gotten completely around that you've been in this business for 50 years? I mean, that's a heck of a long time.
It was actually 53 years in August. So
Oh,
we're
really?
well,
Okay.
54th year. And, time's flying, man. And no, I never had any idea that, I'd have a career like this long and go as far as I went. I always tell people in my interviews, my vision was so limited when I was 17 that the band that I really admired got a gig in Sacramento. We were in the Bay Area. They got a gig in Sacramento, and I thought, man,
Big
if I
time.
could just go to Sacramento, that would be something. So yeah, I far exceeded my wildest dreams.
Wow. What's, I mean, you've seen it all, so I'm curious, what do you feel are the best and worst changes that you've seen in the music business?
Um, well, the worst changes for me, and it's not all bad. Don't get me wrong, but we have such a corporate rock and roll scene happening now. So everything is, Live Nation or, Clear Channel, and then they get bought and they get bought. But the bottom line is when you get to the venue and when you're leaving the venue and you're settling, with the promoters, it used to be much more of a human experience. And now there's like a checklist and the guy goes, this is how we do it. Here you go. Here's your readout. And it's the soul kind of got taken out of it. It's not like the old days with Bill Graham and those types.
Yeah.
But, there's elements that are much better because of that too, so, but I kind of missed that, and in terms of the best, I don't know that I could say what the best changes in the music industry are. There's been so many, and they're all good. I think as you get to 20 years, 25 years, 30 years in the business, people start asking you questions where they're trying to draw you out and have you knock the way things are currently.
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of questions about, what do you think about the state of music today? There's no, they're saying basically there's no good music today, and I'm like, yeah, no, there's always good music, yeah, and there's always crap. And the young people always find the good music, yep, and the old people are always telling them that's crap. I mean, that's just the way it is.
We experienced the same thing as kids, right? So.
Absolutely. So, there's been a lot of changes, and as they come, people are knocking them, and then pretty soon that's the norm. And then you get 10 years down the road, and they're like, well, it should be like that. That's how it was 10 years, so.
Well, you've, like I said, you've been through a lot, you've seen a lot. I'm curious and I love hearing these kind of stories from artists. Do you have a favorite fan story where a fan come up to you and said, "Hey, Emilio, your music meant this to me," or something along those lines? What are some of the favorite things you've heard in your years in the business?
Well, I have a lot of people come up to me and they use the phrase, your music has been the sound, the score, as it were, of my life, mm-hmm, and that's flattering. But I think the one that, usually gets me is when, these women come up and say, I named my son after you, and I'm like, whoa.
I wasn't even in Toledo that year,
We got a bunch of Emilios out there, I was like, don't mind. You know?
Oh boy, yeah. And if they're saying that and their husband or significant others behind them, it's like, dude, don't Oh man, that's funny.
But I remember one fan story. I was playing at BB King's in New York City, and I come out. This big bouncer guy comes back. He goes, "Hey man, this guy, he's not leaving. He needs to talk to you, you know." And I go, "Okay," and I go out there, you know, and this guy goes, "I am whatever his name, a Russian name. I am Igor, you know, from Moscow, you know." I go, "Hey, how you doing, Igor?" You know, and he goes, "I am here to see Tower of Power." You know, I go, "Well, here we are." And he goes, "No, I come from Moscow to see Tower of Power." And I go, "Great." I go, "Thank you so much." You know, and he says, and I said, "So, what brings you to New York City?" And he goes, "Tower of Power." And I go, "What? You came here to see us?" He goes, "Yes. You don't come to Moscow, so I come to New York City to see Tower of Power." I was like, "Wow, okay. You're not here in business?" "No."
Or collude with presidents or whatever,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wow, I mean, that cost him a pretty penny and quite a long flight too, Gosh.
Probably some heavy red tape as well.
Yeah, that for sure. And probably a lot of interrogation when he got back. So,
Right.
that's amazing. Well, tell me about this new album, man. I've been listening to it. Love it. Tell me a story about how it all came together.
Well, you know, we were coming up on 50 years, and so we knew we needed to. We knew we were going to have a celebration. We did one at 40 years, and it
Mm-hmm.
was great. And we did a DVD, and we're very proud of that. And we wanted to do another celebration because it was an even bigger milestone. 50s, you know, your golden anniversary. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and we wanted to make sure it was something different from the other one. The other one, we just invited everybody that was ever in the band, and most of them showed up, and it was you know, it was very good. And preparing it was kind of a chore because there was just so many people and kind of random, a lot of random stuff happened. But we thought this one we wanted to plan it out a little more carefully, and so we asked certain people to come: Lenny Pickett, Chester Thompson,
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Conti, Ray Green played trombone. We asked two background singers to sing for us. Tony Lindsay, who sang lead for Santana for years,
Yeah.
and Melanie Cracchiolo, who sang background on the previous two albums. Excellent singer. And then we added 10 strings, and that's something we, you know, 50 years we've never played with the string section other than in the studio, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we've always wanted to do a live gig where we had violins, you know, and man, that was really something, you know. So, you know, we did that, and then we chose the songs really carefully. We did two complete shows in you know, each night. There were two nights, and then we worked on it for 2 years to get it all mixed and sequenced and mastered and do the artwork, and we're very proud of it. It's called Tower Power. Funk and Soul. What is it? 50 years of funk and soul
Yep.
at the Fox Theater in Oakland.
Yep. Right there.
There it is.
We're looking right over my shoulder. So I I be I mean, a lot of, obviously the songs have been heard before, but on this particular release, I always tell the artist I quit asking a long time ago what the favorite song is because it's like picking your favorite child, and as parents we're not supposed to do that. But so I do ask now, what would you point to as a calling card as far as the tune on the album that says, hey, even if you've heard everything we've done in the past, if you hear this song, you're going to really love the rest of the album. Which cut would that be if you were to pick one?
Hmm. Well, you know, I'm a fan of the ballads. I always have been.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a song called Just When We Start Making It, you know, and the strings are in there and the extra vocals and the extra horns and, you know, the extra keyboards. And it's phenomenal. And then, you know, for like 15 years before we did that concert, people have been bugging me to do squib cakes. which is one of our most famous tunes, but we played it so much, and we just and we kind of over the years we played it so much that we got bored with it, and we started making changes to it. So we'd add a different chord progression here, and we do a different breakdown here. We changed it so much that instead of calling it squib cakes, I used to put it in the set. I'd write squib, and the guys would go, "Oh, funk opus tonight." you know? And so finally, I just stopped calling it, and we didn't do it for like 15 years. But people are always asking for it, so we worked it up for that gig. And I
Cool.
have to say, the solos on that particular instrumental just blistering. It was great to have Lenny Pickett and Tom Politzer, our sax player, was in there just bringing it. Bruce Conti took a great solo, and Chester Thompson just kills it on the B3. So I think those two would be the calling card.
Cool. What's been the reaction so far from fans and family and insiders, so to speak?
Well, we did actually two albums before this. We released, in 2018 and then in 2019. And all three of the albums, we worked with Joe Vanelli, who's
Mm-hmm.
Gino Vanelli's brother, produced all those records for Gino Vanelli. Fabulous producer, and he and I together produced all three records. And everybody in the last 3 years has, been telling me that they just can't believe that we're so, you know, currently vibrant with our recording process. We made three great records, and that was my goal as I started the process with all three of those records, was to make the best records of our career. And I think I came real close. I
They're
mean,
great.
everybody's going to always say, those records in the early 70s, and I'm very proud of those records. But these records, a lot of, especially groups, maybe not quite as old as us, but getting up there, the quality seems to go down, or the energy,
Yeah.
or the how hard they work on their recordings or whatever. But we put everything we had into these things, and they came out great.
Well, it shows, and the video I was watching of, of this one. My lord, I mean, I'm kind of an empath, so I always kind of put myself in the person's shoes that I'm watching, whether it's a movie or a performance, and I just kept thinking James Brown through a lot of this, and it's like this, high energy moves, and all of that, and it's like, man, I don't know how you guys aren't just like collapsing at the end of a show, because I mean, the energy that's coming from you guys is amazing. So,
Well, we've been doing a lot of interviews about it, and some of them I've been doing with David Garibaldi. And David's always quick to point out, because I rehearsed the band for 3 days prior to the gig, and we did a lot of preparation before that. But I
right.
mean, I rehearsed the whole band, strings, background singers, extra players, everything, for 3 days, like 8 hours a day.
Wow.
And then we took a day off, and then we had a long sound check and did, four shows in 2 days. And he said, we put every part of ourselves into those shows. And when it was over, let me tell you, we were like, ah,
Spent.
and we kind of really felt really high off the ground for about a week. It
Hmm.
was such an exhilarating experience.
Well, I think you guys knocked it out of the park on this, man. I've been sharing it some on YouTube. I mean, not YouTube, on Facebook and such, through my personal one, and of course, when this interview posts, I'll have one of those performances embedded on the launch page that will kick people to this interview. But I read another interview that you did, and it really piqued my interest. I'm a believer, and I saw that where you give credit to your faith, or turning to your faith to help you in with your recovery and such. And I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing maybe a little bit about that with fans that'll be watching this interview.
Well, I kind of bottomed out on my alcoholism and drug addiction in early 1988, and I sobered up. My sobriety date is February 20th, 1988. And you know, I found out that that recovery program works for people like me, and I wanted it, but I was wary that it was a God thing. I did not want to talk about God. I didn't want to sit around with people that talked about God, certainly not Jesus Christ. And I was worried that that's what it was going to be about. And sure enough, I got some of the literature and I see God with the capital G, and, it's kind of put the pin in the balloon. Oh, no, this is not what I want. But, an old timer pulled me aside and said, don't let the God thing throw you. Look at the people that have the kind of life you want, the kind of sobriety you want, try their God on for size, and if that doesn't work, move on to the next. Okay, so that's a process that these 12-step groups do, and I started to do that. Well, very quickly I realized that I was going to have to come to terms with the God issue, and it wasn't that I didn't believe that God existed. I knew he existed. And I knew, and I don't know why I knew this, but I knew he existed and I was going to have to face him someday. And I don't know where I got that from. I have no religious background whatsoever, but I had a lot of shame when I cleaned up. And all that stuff that, I was ashamed of, I knew I was going to have to atone for that at some point. That's just a feeling that I had. And I never spoke that out, but in my heart, that was my feeling. So I realized now on this side of it that, really what I was doing was I just didn't want to talk about God. I didn't want to think about it. And that's a large part of the reason why I continued to get loaded for so long. But, the recovery process brought me to a place. And then you hear people talking about, well, I believe in, they say you can believe in whatever you want. I had big problems and I needed a big God, and I checked out every single way to God you can possibly imagine. I read the Quran in English. I read about Buddha. I did the Course in Miracles. I checked out, all the Deepak Chopra books, every New Age book, The Road Less Traveled, every Emmett Fox book, Ernest Holmes. I read and I pursued God, because once I started praying to God, my life started getting better. And, I'm an addict. So when I do something and it works, I do it over and over again, and, I had started to pray and it started to work. Well, guess what? I started to pray more. And so as this process is unfolding in my life, I want to know this God that is doing for me what I can't do for myself. And, I checked everything out and I checked the Bible out, and for some reason, I don't know, to me, that's where the truth lied. And I kept going back to the Bible, but I had a hard time understanding it. And I read it 2 pages a day for 10 years. And the reason I had a hard time understanding it is because I did not want to see Jesus Christ. I did not. To me, Jesus believers were do-gooders and finger pointers and hypocrites, and this is just stuff in my head, And finally, I got to the place, where I wanted to be able to say, I don't believe in Jesus Christ, and here's why, and give an educated answer. Or I absolutely believe in Jesus Christ, and here's why, and give an educated answer. And I realized I couldn't do that. So what did I do? What I learned in recovery is ask for help. And first I asked God, I said, if you need me to know about this Jesus Christ character, you're going to have to make it clear to me, because the cross, all that, how does that relate to me?
Right.
And then I had been going to this church with my wife at the time, and there was this pastor, and his name was R.D. Baker. And he used to crack jokes from the pulpit, and and it's like, to me, if anybody was going to be my mentor in biblical teaching, he was going to be an old stoic black guy, and instead it's this young, good-looking country bumpkin comedian guy, But that's who was in my life. They have a saying in recovery, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, that's who was in my life. And so I called that guy, and I asked him. Uh, he said, "Well, what can I do for you?" I said, "I need help with this Bible." He said, "Well, I can help you with that, bro. I'll be over tomorrow." And he came over with two other guys. And I remember he held up the Bible and he says to me, "Do you believe this is the word of God?" And I go, "Yes." He goes, "You do?" I go, "Absolutely." And I did. I had gotten to that place. This is 16 years into recovery. I mean,
Wow.
I've already really searching
Right.
God out, and I've already been praying, and he says, "So you believe this is the word of God?" He goes, "You're in a good place, bro. Let me show you something." And he goes, John 14:6. Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And I had never seen that. And I go, "Where's that at?" He goes, John 14:6. He shows me, and then there was some other scriptures. And I never had a problem with Jesus Christ after that day. I believe that's the day I believed. Um, and then, I got baptized. But these days, I get up every morning, I study the Bible, and I study some recovery literature. I spend a couple of hours every morning, preparing my mind and my heart spiritually to go out and deal with the world. I look at it like, I'm in the battle, and there's God and there's Satan, and I belong to God, and He's the victor. And I try to go out and do His will.
Well, thank you for sharing that, man. That's powerful stuff, and I am on board with you there, man. That's cool. Um, you've been you've done a lot of collaborations. You and the band have over the years. Who haven't you worked with that you still want to?
Sting.
That would be a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I met Sting years ago at an Eric Clapton concert. I went there to see Robert Cray, actually. He was opening for Eric. And I had become really close friends with the Robert Cray band. And I'm talking to Robert backstage, and Sting walks up. And he goes, "Oh, Sting, this is Emilio Castillo. He's the leader of Tower of Power." And Sting looks at me and he goes, "Tower of Power?" He goes, "That's a great band." And he goes, "I used to have a Tower of Power clone band before I had the Police. And
Wow.
we did uh, Only So Much Oil in the Ground and Don't Change Horses in the Middle of the Stream."
Mm-hmm.
And ever since then, I've always thought I would love to re-record Only So Much Oil in the Ground. That's one of my favorite tunes that we do live. And I believe that lyric is more pertinent today than the day I wrote it, and gets more pertinent every day. And I just thought it'd be great to rearrange it and have the whole band play and sing beyond the
Oh,
recording.
that'd be fun. That would be really fun. As far as future plans, what's on your radar with you and the band?
I want to do a Christian gospel praise record, and I want to do a secular record. And the last time we did a studio recording, I recorded 28 songs, and we put out 2 albums. And that was a big project, but it really turned out great, and we're very proud of that work. And I like the idea of doing that, just recording enough material for 2 records. And I really want to, I dig these gospel praise artists like Fred Hammond, Diedrich Hammond, Yolanda Adams, Smokey Norfolk, I just, the Winans, I love that gospel praise music. It's my opinion that all the great soul singers are in the church,
Yeah.
and I want to do one of those records. So I'm hoping to, have the band record enough material, Christian material, and enough secular material to do 2 records.
It's interesting you say that because I yesterday day before, I guess it was, I interviewed. It's not up on the site yet, but Carmine Appice, the drummer, Vanilla Fudge, and Rod Stewart and all that. He's telling me, he goes, "Yeah, I've written and rough recorded 3 Christian songs." I was like, "What?" All right, and he sent them to me, and he wants to do some Christian music.
Wow. So he's a
Pardon me?
so he's a Christian.
Yeah, yeah. I said, well, have you, he lived down in Florida. I said, well, have you talked to Rick Derringer? Have you talked to, Jonathan Cain from Journey? And no. And so anyway, who knows what'll come of all that, man. I think it would be great if all you guys kind of got together and, did some stuff that helped each other out in that area and, mutual support and all that kind of thing. I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I knew Carmine Appice back in the early 80s when I moved to Los Angeles, and everybody, we all used to hang out at the record plant studio.
Mm-hmm.
And he would come in. He was a big fan of the band and just a great guy. Obviously.
Oh yeah. It was my second interview with him, and wonderful man. I love talking with him. So, and I know you've answered this last question I have for you a million times, but I always like asking it. If I interview a person more than once, I'll ask it maybe every other time, and it kind of helps me gauge where people are in their life and their thought processes and such. And I know, like I said, I know you've been asked it before, but when you step off of the great tour bus of life up at the great gig in the sky, to borrow from Pink Floyd, how do you want to be remembered? What do you hope your legacy is?
I want to be remembered as a man of God who was redeemed by Christ. That's what I want to be. I want to be known as a band leader who proclaimed the gospel and helped others to come to Christ. That's what I want to be.
Good deal. That's powerful. Well, Emilio, this was fun. It was informative, and my door is always open to you when you guys have a new album come out. I want to talk to you about it and help get the word out. And so I'll be in touch, stay in touch with Fiona, and we'll do this again. And if there's something coming up, if you don't hear from me first, yell at me and we'll get this set up and we'll talk about it. Okay.
All right. I look forward to it.
All right, man. Thank you, and take care. And thank you for 50 years of great music, man. And here's to another 50 more if we live that long, right?
You're going to say it's been my pleasure. God bless you.
All right. God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye. This has been another fun-filled episode of Boomerocity with your host and producer, Randy Patterson. The theme song is Roll the Dice and is recorded and used by permission from Quentin Hope. Quentin is spelled Quinten, and Hope is Hope. And you can find out more about Quentin at quentinhope.com. Post-production is done by Cardinal Sins Productions. The Boomerocity name, logo, and content is copyright protected. Segments may only be used with written permission by Boomerocity and or its assignees. Inquiries should be directed to input@boomerocity.com. Copyright 2025.